So do you like listening to music? You probably listen to it every day at home or in your car. Your favorite musicians are probably Alicia Keys,
When the rain is pouring down,
the Beatles,
come together.
or even Elvis. But did you know that the way we hear music today is thanks to only one man, Bach? And today, he is considered as simply the greatest musician who has ever lived. But before Bach, music was so boring. So boring that even when people will see it live, they will simply fall asleep. Here to explain music back then is piano professor Norman Mamie.
My name is Norman Mamie. I am a composer, conductor, teacher, bon vivant. Well, the music was very polyphonic. It was which that means is there is more than one melody, usually many melodies going on at the same time, either done by choral or by instrumental groups, as opposed to what's happened in latter years, which is just chords that are with a melodic line on them. So it's called polyphonic.
And the reason music was polyphonic was because music was owned by the church. And this caused Martin Luther, a professor of theology and a German priest, to nail the 95 Theses. What the 95 Theses explain is what the church should and should not be doing. And part of the thesis was about writing music.
The church wanted most music done with Gregorian chant, and usually in Latin, and Luther wanted the music to be sung by the congregation, and it also not in Latin, but in the language of the people who was the people of the church that were going to church. So that was a complete difference in concept from what the Catholic Church wanted at that time.
Can you also add why it was strictly forbidden to play the seventh chord?
There was a sound in it that was called the tritone, which was this sound, which was referred to as the diabolus in musica, or the devil in music. To our ears, we've grown to we've grown up on the dissonance, and so it hasn't had the same effect on our ears as it did at that time. Before that, everything was very pure. Very holy. So when you have something like sticking into it, it just kind of throws everything off.
And one of these musicians was Bach's father, Johann Sebastian Bach, who also taught Bach to play at a very early age and taught Bach Martin Luther's secular book. So in a way, Martin Luther had an influence to Bach. During the era when Bach was writing music, the era was known as the Baroque period, which started concerts and operas. And because of the Baroque period, he wrote many concerts and operas. But it was his organ solo works that basically changed all rules of music, such pieces as Toccata and Fugue in D minor, and Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor. As a professor of music theory, what do you think was going through Bach's head, and by what made him change to break the rules?
Well, he introduced a lot of things that were not thought of, and everything was moving. Everybody until, but then he. interlocking, moving lines, as opposed to everything being on one level.
And with music now catching the ears of people, it led for more musicians to surface and allows them to change the era of music. For example, after Bach's death, the era of music was now known as the classical era, which rose Beethoven, Chopin, and Mozart. And all three of them studied Bach's music. And then after the classical, you got the romantic, and the 21st century, which is the music we listen to today with hip-hop, reggae, jazz, ragtime, and rock and roll.
But goodbye, she got on a plane, never to return again, but always in my heart.
So all the genres that we hear today was inspired by Bach. For example, jazz was inspired by gospel music that the African Americans would sing, and gospel is based on Bach's choral church music. Even Elvis Presley, the king of rock, who grew up listening to church music.
And a lot of television music themes are based upon Bach. Rock and roll is based upon Bach. This old tune. That's from one of the Bach's pieces. So everything is based upon, it goes back to Bach's time and even earlier.